Chances are, if you're an indie developer, you're probably combining working on your game along with working on a full-time job. Or maybe you're going through studies. Sometimes you may be wondering though, how do I combine the two things together in an efficient way so that I get the most out of my time?
That's the neat thing. You don't.
Okay, I'm sorry. Don't click off just yet. There is actually a way, and plenty of indie developers are actually capable of combining both making their own game as well as maintaining their families, doing their other jobs, or maybe they're still studying game dev along the side, or maybe even a completely unrelated education. There's just a few things you need to keep in mind in order to make it successful. Stick around as we'll be going over 5 different tactics that you can use to combine game development with anything else that you're doing in life, basically. Let me start by first giving a bit of context as to why I think that I can give you some good information about combining game development and working another job. Well, you may already know me. If not, I'm Marnix, and here at Bite Me Games, I'm the creative director and the producer basically of our upcoming game Forge Industry. However, Bite Me Games is not my full-time job. It's actually just a friendly group project that me and 3 other friends have made where we just wanted to make our own games. When I'm not working on Forge Industry, you can find me working at a major tech firm designing data centers for large enterprises, which is quite different if you ask me, but it also gives me a good perspective of, okay, how do I combine these two things in a way that it can be stressful at times, don't get me wrong, but that it's still also very doable combining both game development as well as working another 40-hour work week every week. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a few key advantages to combining the two. Okay, of course, the dream is to only work on game development, or the real dream is you have a successful game and you don't even need to work anymore. But to get to that point, there's a lot of stages we need to go through. And the advantage we get if we have a full-time job on the side, or well, on the side, it's a full-time job, we have money. Money is honestly the enabler of everything, because we will not just die of starvation, our bills will be able to be paid, and if you have, for example, a child or someone else in your life who you need to take care for, you can also make sure that they won't just starve to death as well. But money is the obvious one. There are some other advantages that I've learned that are really helpful when you're working on the side on your game, and that is that no matter what job you're in, there's almost always something that you can learn from that specific domain that you can transfer to game development. Maybe for me, because I also partially work in sales, it's also learning about how to talk to other people. Because if you're just developing games, of course, it's quite hard to also develop your social skills. And if you're working at another company, chances are that you're not working there alone. That's already, for example, a very big one. You can learn more, how do I do the soft skills of working? Especially if later on your game becomes successful and you want to hire maybe someone else, then you have an idea of how would I go ahead with this. Of course, there are a bunch of disadvantages, and you already know the number one probably, which is why you clicked on this video, is where do I find the time to work on all of this? You're working 40 hours a week on your job, and if you want your game to be successful, you'll probably need to work another 40 to 60 or maybe even 80 hours a week on your game, depending on when your release schedule is. And it's not just time that is taken away from you when you're working at another company, it's also just your mental energy. If you've already worked 8 hours for your day job, and then during the evening, maybe even if you find, oh, I have 3 hours I can dedicate to my game, your brain just simply won't be able and as fresh anymore to work on the game. This, of course, then causes your game to take more time, and then we go back to the problem of, hey, we don't have enough time to begin with. So, assuming that you are going to stay full-time at your other job because you need the money or you need the social contact, there are some ways that we can actually make it a lot simpler to combine the two, or less intensive and more efficient. So let's go over those now. The first and probably key takeaway that you need to have from this video is that all comes down to your planning. How you work on your game and when you work on your game. This is probably the most crucial part that you can get wrong or right when trying to combine both game development and working on another company. We've already said it before in a lot of videos, I think, at this point, but you need to become good at project management. So that would be stuff like, oh, I need to make a Kanban board to do issue tracking. What is every feature I need in my game? What is everything that needs to be done? Tools for that can be a Trello or a Notion board, or as we use at Bite Me Games, we use GitLab, in which we can track all of our issues. We can assign them to people. We know who's working on what, when will we be able to work on certain things. And it really makes it a lot easier to get an overall picture of, okay, I have this 2-hour time block. What am I going to do with my time? Oh, I can look, okay, this issue here I see here. That one is something that I should be able to do in 2 hours, then let's go for it. Once you also have these tasks, it's really important to set a daily or weekly planning. Ideally, you want to go daily, but for some like larger scale features, such as maybe big mechanics, you should make a weekly planning of, okay, by the end of the week, I need to have this done. One big problem that you'll encounter when developing indie games on the side, especially when you're working on it on your own and it's your passion project, is you tend to be too perfectionistic. So a feature that, okay, I can do 80% of this feature in like 1 day, but then I can spend another 4 days just polishing up the feature so that it's just as I imagined, is very time inefficient, and we need to use our time as efficiently as possible, because remember, 40 hours of our week are already being eaten up by working for our day job. The second big problem that I see a lot of developers make is having bad consistency. Maybe they take a week of vacation from their day job and they're like, okay, this week I'm really going to work on my game, add a lot of new features. And they do work on their game. They add a lot of features that 1 week, but then they go back to their main job and oh, that's now 3 weeks of just not touching the project at all. Maybe they like start up Unity once, but then realize that, hey, I don't really know what I want to do. Maybe because they have lack of planning, or maybe because they just have so much to do still. Instead, it's much better to just do something every day. And then maybe your overall volume of how many hours you've worked will be less compared to 1 week of going all out. But the consistency is truly what makes it much more achievable to finish your game. You need to make a habit out of working on your game so that no questions asked, every day you do something for your game. Once you've made working on your game a habit, I have full confidence that it may take some time still, but you will finish your game. Because of course, you don't need to implement a full mechanic every day. It can just be something really small. Maybe it's like, oh, I need this one model for one small part of a level. Let me just work on that. And if I'm busy for the rest of the day, then I'm busy, no worries. But I will at least have accomplished something today. This third tactic can require a bit of dedication, and a lot of indie developers may be scared away when I'm first saying this, but it's basically, you need to get better discipline and you need to learn how to sacrifice. It doesn't sound really nice, but it's the reality, unfortunately, that if you wanna work 40 hours a week on your day job and work 40 hours a week maybe on your game, well, there's only so many hours in a week. You will have to sacrifice some of your Netflixing or anything else that's really just, oh, I want to chill a bit. Of course, you still need to chill from time to time, but you won't be able to reach the same level of chilling and just hanging around doing less productive stuff than if you were not making game. That's simply something that you need to realize. This sacrifice is something that we at Bite Me especially also had to do. So before we started working on our game, we were already a group of friends and we spent maybe 2 to 3 hours almost every day just playing League of Legends together. And we were doing stuff like watching anime as well a lot. We haven't done that in a very long time. We play maybe a game of League a month, maybe 2 games, but still barely anything. And anime, well, I'm sorry for my friends if you're watching this, we haven't really watched anything in the past months together as the group. Instead, we realized that, hey, if we want to make our goal of becoming true indie developers and quitting our day job so we can go full-time indie, we need to sacrifice today for what we can achieve 3 years from now. Our fourth topic ties in a bit with the second one, and that is to keep making progress and don't get stuck. So the first thing is that, okay, we work on our game every day. The second part is that we work on our game every day and we progress in our game every day, or we progress in how far we reach. It's really important to be able to look back and be like, oh, remember how 2 months ago we were so bad at these things and now look at how far we've come. For us personally, a really good example of that is look at our devlog. So we're at number 9 or something soon. If we just go back to devlog number 5 or something, it's almost like a completely different game. And that really also just makes you feel a bit better inside of, hey, you know, all the stuff I'm doing is really moving the needle. And it's looking back that also fuels your motivation to keep on working, because you can't do this on purely discipline. You also need to be motivated. And if you're just working on the same thing for weeks and weeks on end without truly making any progress, your motivation is going to tank and you'll just crash and burn at some point and you'll never really want to finish your game. Instead, it's important that you can switch between multiple tasks as quickly as you can while still completing every task as well as you can. So once again, something like having issue management where you can see, okay, this is everything I need to do, and then maybe diversifying so you're not working on the same thing every week, but being like, oh, I finished this small issue that is code related. Now I'm going to make some models, and then I'm going to make some sounds, and then I'll go back to programming something. All of those things add up and they really increase your motivation as well. If you're stuck on a project, well, there are luckily a few things you can do. First of all, maybe you're stuck on some sound problem or on some programming problem. Maybe you have some friends. Go and reach out to your friends, maybe they can help you, or ideally, if you're like us, you have some of the friends who are in your development team that you can also reach out to. If you're still stuck, then remember, we have money because we still have our full-time job. It may just be worth it to go and let someone else take care of it. You just give them some money and there's some freelance contractor on Fiverr or wherever. They solve your problem and you can keep working on the stuff that you're better at, that you're not as stuck at, and you'll just achieve more progress in the end. And then lastly, we said it before that, okay, when you're working a day job and you're also working on your full-time game, how can I still relax? Because you need to do some relaxation. We won't be able to play League of Legends for hours on end. Okay, fine, no gaming, but we still want to be able to relax somehow. So what we do there is you need to be creative. I can't give you like a 100% guide of do these things, but instead I can tell you about what works for us here at ByteMe, and you can maybe see if you can apply some of these things to your own life. One big one that we do is, okay, we don't play games together anymore, but now instead we just meet up at maybe a restaurant, all four of us, and whilst we have lunch there or dinner or whatever, we also just discuss ByteMe games, we discuss our game, but we also just have fun as friends in the end. And it's this really that also inspires you, but also relaxes you at the same time, which is really important if you want to still feel refreshed to work on your game as well as on your other jobs, and not feel like you'll be stuck in this eternal state of working for the rest of your life. Some other things I do that if I am just too tired to really work on my game, but I still want to do something that's, a bit related to game development so I can keep on improving to, at one point, quit my day job, for example, is I listen to podcasts about game development. It's something I discovered quite recently when I was driving a lot. I'll link one of them below that I really enjoy, where it goes over very high-level talks with, for example, founders or directors or composers, where they just talk about their experiences working in the game industry. And it's by listening to these that it's, first of all, it's inspiring because, these are usually guys who've made established indie titles or AAA games, anything really. And it's also a good source of inspiration for, oh, how did they have problems? Oh, how did they struggle? How did they overcome? And it's also, you're still learning something, but honestly, if you ask me, listening to a podcast is generally quite relaxing because you can just do it when you're chilling, when you're driving, when you're doing dishes, whenever, and you can still feel like, oh, I've actually achieved something today. Maybe I didn't implement code, but I have this new idea of how I'm going to tackle things in the future, and I'm also entertained in the meantime by listening to these stories. So that brings me to the end. Let me know in the comments down below. I'm actually quite curious, what are you currently working on if you're an indie developer? Are you full-time? Are you doing it part-time maybe? Or are you actually working another job? Are you doing studies? I'm really interested, honestly, to hear from you, and maybe you also have some ideas or tips or tricks you want to share on how you do it and what works for you and what definitely doesn't work for you. That's also very important. Apart from that, if you're new here, we at ByteMe Games are documenting our journey of making your own resource automation and management game, Forge Industry. You can wishlist that one on Steam right now if you want. Apart from that, we also document how are we making our own games, what are the things we learn. So for example, we're all working full-time on other jobs as well. How do we combine that with working on our own game? If this is something that interests you, be sure to subscribe to our channel. You can always leave a like as well. It really helps us out and it's a win-win, as you'll also get this inspiring content and you'll learn something, hopefully, every week. That's all I have for this week, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.